I used to think my boyfriend was just insecure. Jealous, even. Every time Jason's name came up, Ethan's jaw would tighten, his voice would drop, and I could almost see the storm brewing behind his calm eyes. He would say things like, "Rachel, I don't like the way he looks at you." Or, "You really think he just wants to be friends?" And I'd laugh. I'd roll my eyes. I'd call him controlling. Because to me, Jason was just Jason. My best friend since college, the guy who made me laugh until I cried, who was always up for an adventure, who never judged me when I vented about work or about Ethan. He was fun, carefree, spontaneous, the exact opposite of Ethan. And maybe that was part of the problem. Ethan and I had been together for 3 years. 3 solid, beautiful years. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't dramatic, but he was steady. Dependable. He showed up when he said he would, he remembered the little things, he cared for me in ways I didn't even notice at first. Like how he'd fill my car with gas when I forgot, or how he'd bring me soup when I was sick, or how he always made sure I got home safe. He wasn't the guy who made me laugh until my stomach hurt. But he was the guy who made me feel safe. Still, sometimes safe can feel boring. Jason, on the other hand, had this energy about him. The kind of guy who could walk into a room and everyone would look his way. He cracked jokes at the most inappropriate times, dared me to do things I normally wouldn't, and never seemed to care about what people thought. Around him, I felt younger, freer, like the world was meant to be played with, not endured. So when Ethan would warn me, "Rachel, he doesn't see you as just a friend. You're too blind to see it," I dismissed it. I told him he was imagining things. I told him Jason and I were just close, that not every man wanted something more. But Ethan didn't buy it. And honestly, maybe a part of me didn't either. Still, I brushed it off. I told myself that if Ethan really loved me, he'd trust me. That he was just being possessive, jealous, unfair. Then came the invitation. Jason texted me one Friday, "A few of us are planning a cabin trip this weekend. You in? It'll be fun, music, drinks, campfires. Just like old times." I was excited instantly. I wanted the laughter, the freedom, the break from routine. Ethan, of course, wasn't thrilled. He crossed his arms, gave me that look, and said quietly, "I'm not going." And honestly, I wish you wouldn't either. But I did. I went anyway. And that decision, ignoring the one person who truly loved me, was the moment my life started to unravel. When Ethan told me not to go, I remember snapping back at him. I shouldn't have to cut off a friend just because my boyfriend is insecure. The words came out harsher than I intended, but in that moment, I truly believed them. I told myself I deserved freedom, space, a chance to breathe. I wasn't doing anything wrong, I was just going on a trip with my friends. And if Ethan couldn't handle that, well, maybe that was his issue, not mine. The cabin was beautiful. Nestled deep in the woods, away from traffic and city lights. As soon as we got there, laughter echoed everywhere, people unloading snacks, beers, setting up music. It felt like being transported back to my college days, before responsibility, before serious relationships, before I had someone like Ethan quietly worrying about me. At first, it was all innocent. We grilled food, played cards, shared stories by the fire. I texted Ethan updates here and there, but his responses were clipped. Just, "You okay?" or "Having fun?" Short, polite, but distant. I brushed it off as him sulking. Jason, though, was in his element. He sat beside me most of the night, his knee brushing against mine under the table. He whispered jokes in my ear during games, leaning closer than he needed to. I laughed it off, because that's what I always did with Jason. He was touchy, flirty, but I convinced myself it was harmless. That's just who he was. But the truth. Every time his hand lingered on my arm, every time his shoulder pressed against mine, I felt something twist inside me. Not attraction, not yet. Just the awareness that Ethan had been right all along. Still, I ignored it. Late into the night, when the drinks loosened everyone's tongues, Jason leaned over and said quietly, "You know, if Ethan really loved you, he'd trust you enough to let you just be yourself." I froze for a second. The words shouldn't have meant anything, but they dug into me. Because deep down, hadn't I been thinking the same thing? That Ethan was too serious, too cautious, too unwilling to just let go and have fun. Jason's words made it sound like love was supposed to feel wild, unrestricted, like a rush of adrenaline, not measured, not careful. I forced a laugh and told him to shut up, but inside, a seed had been planted. The next morning, as I sat on the porch watching the sunrise with a pounding headache, I found myself comparing the two men in my life. Ethan, steady and grounded, who built a future step by step. And Jason, reckless and carefree, who made life feel like a game. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, Ethan wasn't protecting me at all. Maybe he was holding me back. It happened on the second night. The fire had burned low, everyone scattered between the porch and the living room. A few had already gone to bed. The air inside the cabin was thick with music, laughter, and the haze of too many drinks. Jason and I were sitting on the couch, side by side, a little too close. He'd been teasing me about how terrible I was at a drinking game, his hand brushing mine every time I reached for my cup. I told myself it was innocent. That he was just being Jason. But then, he leaned in. At first, I thought he was whispering something again, another joke meant just for me. But his lips brushed mine, soft and sure, as if he had been waiting years for this moment. I froze. My body didn't react the way it should have. I didn't shove him off instantly. I didn't scream. For a few unbearable seconds, I just sat there. My mind raced, my heart thundered, and the strangest thing washed over me, flattery. Because here was this guy who had always been the fun one, the one everyone seemed to want, and he was choosing me. For a heartbeat, I felt curious. What if? And that tiny hesitation, those few seconds of weakness, was all it took for everything to change. Suddenly, I snapped back. I jerked away from him, breathless. "Jason, stop. I have Ethan. I can't do this." He smirked, like I hadn't even said it. "You didn't seem like you wanted me to stop." That made me feel sick. Because he wasn't completely wrong. I hadn't stopped him right away. I'd let it linger. And now I couldn't take that moment back. I stood up quickly, muttering that I needed some air, and stumbled outside onto the porch. The night was cold, the kind of cold that cuts through alcohol haze, and I hugged myself, trembling, not from the weather, but from the weight of what had just happened. I had betrayed Ethan. Not in the physical sense, not fully, but in the way that mattered most. In my hesitation. In my silence. The next morning, I couldn't even look Jason in the eye. He acted like nothing happened, joking around with everyone, but every laugh of his made bile rise in my throat. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. His voice on the other end wasn't angry, wasn't demanding. It was calm. Too calm. "We'll talk when you get back." My stomach dropped. The words weren't casual, they were final. Did someone tell him? Had Jason bragged? Or worse, did Ethan just know? Either way, I felt my world begin to collapse, and the trip wasn't even over yet. When I got back home, Ethan was waiting. But not in the way I expected. There was no shouting, no accusations, no frantic demands for answers. He just looked at me. His eyes didn't burn with anger, they were empty, like whatever connection we'd had already been severed. The silence was unbearable. I wanted him to explode, to ask me questions, to give me a chance to explain, or at least defend myself. But he didn't. He just carried on with this detached calmness that made my chest tighten with panic. Finally, after what felt like hours of silence, he said it. "I warned you. And you proved me right. I don't even need details." I broke then. I swore nothing really happened, that Jason had crossed a line and I had pulled away, that I would never cheat on him. My words spilled out, desperate and frantic. But Ethan just shook his head. "The moment you entertained it, it happened." That sentence gutted me. Because deep down, I knew he was right. My hesitation had been enough. My silence in that moment had been a betrayal all its own. Within days, he was gone. No screaming matches, no second chances. He quietly packed a bag, arranged for a friend to help him move his things, and left the key on the counter. I watched him close the door, my entire body begging me to run after him, to fall at his feet and beg, but I didn't. I couldn't. Because I knew I had already lost him. Jason, of course, tried to reach out. He texted, he called, even showed up at my apartment once. But every time I saw his name light up my phone, I felt sick. Not just at him, but at myself. Because suddenly, I saw him for what he was. Jason didn't care about me. He never had. To him, it had always been some twisted game. A chance to prove he could win against Ethan, that he could get me to cross a line. And I let him. I was left alone in that apartment, haunted by the silence Ethan left behind. His voice echoed in my head, those final words replaying over and over, "The moment you entertained it, it happened." And no matter how I tried to justify it, I couldn't escape the truth. I had destroyed everything. Weeks passed in a blur. My apartment felt colder without Ethan's quiet presence. The coffee mug he used every morning sat untouched, his side of the closet empty, the silence deafening. I tried reaching out. A text here, a call there. Nothing. He didn't block me, but he never replied. And somehow, that hurt even more. His silence was a wall I couldn't break through. Then, one evening, a mutual friend mentioned it casually, like it was nothing. "Oh, I saw Ethan the other day, he seems happy. He's seeing someone now." My chest tightened instantly. Seeing someone. Already. It had only been weeks. My first thought was that it was a rebound. That maybe he was just distracting himself, trying to dull the pain of losing me. But the more I pressed, the clearer it became that it wasn't just anyone. Her name was Emily. I knew that name. Ethan had mentioned her before, briefly, carefully. She was someone from his past. A woman he once cared for deeply, but for reasons I'd never pried into, things hadn't worked out. When we first started dating, I remembered catching a glimpse of her name in his old photos. He'd chosen me over her, back then. I never questioned it. And now, after everything I had done, he'd gone back to her. It was like the universe itself had slapped me across the face. Because suddenly, everything made sense. Ethan hadn't been jealous of Jason for no reason. He hadn't been insecure. He had seen the truth I refused to acknowledge. Jason never wanted to be just friends. Ethan's warnings weren't an attempt to control me, they were an act of love. And I had twisted that love into something ugly. I told myself he was possessive. That he didn't trust me. That he was trying to hold me back. But the reality was, he trusted me enough to believe I would honor our relationship. He trusted me to make the right choice. And I didn't. Now he was with Emily, the one person who had always respected his boundaries, who had never blurred lines, who had never made him question her loyalty. The thought tore me apart. Because while I was busy chasing attention, craving excitement, Ethan had been offering me something deeper, something steady and unshakable. And I threw it away. The twist wasn't just that he moved on. The twist was that he moved on to someone who gave him exactly what I couldn't, peace. For weeks, I replayed his last words to me, "I warned you. And you proved me right." And now, I realized, those weren't the words of an insecure man. They were the words of someone who loved me enough to see the danger I was too blind to see. And I had lost him forever. It's been months now, and yet, the silence in this apartment feels louder than any argument Ethan and I ever had. I used to think love was about freedom, excitement, and proving no one could tell me what to do. I thought Ethan's warnings about Jason were nothing more than insecurity or jealousy. But I was wrong. So, painfully, devastatingly wrong. I thought love was about freedom and fun. But real love is about respect and trust. That's the lesson I learned too late. When I look back, I see how blind I was. Jason wasn't exciting, he was reckless. He didn't care about my relationship, my boundaries, or my future. He only cared about proving he could win me over, that he could drive a wedge between me and the man who actually loved me. The very moment I entertained his attention, I destroyed something sacred. Ethan didn't need the details, he already knew. And the cruelest part. Ethan didn't yell. He didn't insult me. He didn't fight. He simply walked away. His silence carried more weight than any explosion of anger ever could. That silence was his revenge, and the moment I heard the door close behind him, I knew there was no coming back. Jason is long gone now, probably chasing after someone else. And me? I'm here, living in the shadow of what I lost. Ethan was my protector, my partner, my safe place, and I threw him away for a fleeting thrill. Then I heard about Emily, the woman who once loved Ethan before me, the one he chose to let go when he chose me. And now, after my betrayal, he's back with her. Not out of spite, but because she was the one who respected his boundaries when I didn't. She was the one who loved him in a way I never did, fully, purely, without mocking his concerns. That was the moment I realized the truth: Ethan never hated Jason. He saw him clearly, while I refused to. His warnings weren't insecurity. They were love. They were his way of shielding me, of shielding us. And I laughed at him for it. Now Ethan is building a future with someone who deserves him. Someone who listened, where I dismissed. Someone who protected what I destroyed. So here I am, left with nothing but my regret. If the person you love warns you about a storm, don't laugh at them for carrying an umbrella. I did, and I lost everything. Would you have trusted him, or would you have made the same mistake I did?